Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, good to see you all. And before we do start, I just want to say thank you for your attendance today, and particularly for subs we'll come to in a minute. But bearing in mind we've got 2 days of budget scrutiny next week as well. So I understand that it's a necessary duty of this committee to do what we're doing. But I know for those of you who work, sometimes arranging those days can be challenging in your different circumstances. So I appreciate that. Well, welcome to the Scrutiny Management Board. Before we start these proceedings, I'm duty bound to bring your attention to the following housekeeping matters. There's no expected fire alarm testing today. Therefore, if the fire alarm does sound, please follow the fire and emergency procedures that are applicable to the council house. This meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeat viewing. By entering this room, committee members are consenting to being filmed throughout the meeting and to the use of those recordings for webcasting. And could I ask you that you please speak clearly and directly into your microphone once you press the right button when addressing the meeting, so that online participants and the public can hear, and that it is switched off when you're not using it, and that your mobile devices are turned to silent. Okay, first of all, are there any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. We've apologies from Councillor Dingle. Councillor Freeman is substituting. Councillor Holloway, Councillor Lawson is substituting. Councillor Darcy, Councillor Lugger is substituting, and apologies from Councillor Ney.
Okay. And could I ask that, given the agenda today, that there are any declarations of interest from this committee in relation to items on the agenda? No? Okay. I don't have any urgent business to discuss. But with your permission, David, could we go to Chris first for the first agenda item, which is the Councillor Chris Penberthy, Cabinet Member for Housing, Communities, Corporate Development.
Yeah, through you, Chair. We, under monitoring reports, there's 3 separate reports. The Corporate Plan Performance Report, the Month 8 Monitoring Report, and the Strategic Risk Report. So we'll start with the Performance Report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and Councillor Lowry sends his apologies. Obviously, he's the lead on 2 of the reports. I will stay for them, but I might not be able to answer the questions he would answer, but at least David has one of us here to do that. So in terms of the performance report, I want to remind members that the primary purpose of bringing this here isn't to delve into every area of performance. That's the responsibility of individual scrutiny panels to do. This is to help inform work programmes. So while we can discuss themes and directions, please excuse me if I'm not able to get into the full detail. Relevant cabinet members and their officers aren't here to answer their questions, and it would be wrong of me to try and assume things about their portfolios. So, because I don't have the knowledge and I don't want to mislead you or misrepresent them. So it's an overview to help guide that. Chair, when I was in your position, the monitoring report was presented to various scrutiny panels. Scrutiny panels had no chance to input to the style of the monitoring report. That was purely officers informed by Cabinet. And I argued that actually one of the things the scrutiny panel should be able to do is help shape the way the report is presented, not necessarily the contents of it, because the contents are what we deliver, but actually that bigger thing. And we have been going on an evolutionary journey of changing the way the report works. So you'll see changes again this time. I would really welcome comments on how we are presenting the council's performance, because it's important that you get the information you need, and also the Cabinet gets the information they need, and that the senior management teams get the information they need without teams having to produce 3 different reports that might tell different stories, because we all need to be working from the same base. So it's a juggling base as we negotiate across all of that. But I am pleased to present this. It demonstrates achievements and areas of continued commitment to improvement. It provides valuable insights, and it also identifies areas where we still need to do more work. And we're honest about all of those. This is, in some ways, the very tip of the iceberg. This is not the performance reporting that is the only performance reporting across the council. This relates explicitly to the corporate plan, so is structured around what is in the corporate plan. So you can say that's what the corporate plan says, here's what the performance is, and is the very headlines from the tops of the directorates. Each CMT member will have performance data, each service director will have performance data, heads of service, managers, all the way down. So this is sort of how we amalgamate things in. If we were to give Scrutiny all the performance data of the council, you would be sitting in a room consistently all year round, wading through paper that was continually changing. So we try and make this as easy as possible by bringing it to that very senior level. And so, you know, if in your scrutiny panels you want more, do feel free to ask. So if you're looking at a topic and you want performance data on that topic, it will exist. Cabinet members and officers will be aware of it. And so if you're saying, you know, we are looking at this, please can you provide performance data on it? That could be included. So please don't be afraid to ask, but at the main report, we're trying to keep it tight. I would like to thank our corporate performance team for the work they do in compiling this. We're on a journey of moving from hundreds and hundreds of different systems and spreadsheets and everything else to trying to pull things together so that there's more automation in the system, but also that there's more clarity and it's more easily accessible. Ultimately, we'd like to be able to put snapshots of lots of performance into the files that you could access so you could see things more in live time. We're not there yet because we need all the stuff underneath it to be in place, but that's the direction we're moving in, so there is greater accountability. So, you know, there's not just producing the report, but actually looking now at the way we systematically deal with performance across the whole council, not just in, oh, this department's really good and there's that bit, and oh, there's another little spreadsheet we've just found over there, because that makes it really difficult for everyone. We've also, as we promised, or I promised in May last year, begun to draw diverse data sources together, not just ours, but some really valuable comparators so that you can see performance against what's happening in the country and in our SIP for comparator group. Quite often, if we did performance before, it's just, this is what our near neighbours are doing. And to be quite honest, not demeaning any of them at all, but the work of North Devon Council as a district or borough has very little equivalence to what we're doing because the demographic and area are totally different. But we used to say this is what our local councils are doing compared to what we're doing. So we are now comparing with our SIP for comparators. That's councils that are like us in lots of other ways. So we can actually judge against our peers. I think that's really important. We've also included now historical data predating the pandemic. So it's not just the last 2 or 3 years, so there's a weird COVID bit. We go from before COVID in, we think that was important because we need to be comparing more business as usual with business as usual rather than business as usual with crisis. And that also helps us to extend and identify better trends and patterns to inform our future direction. It will also help scrutineers because you can talk about improvements or other to performance, and you can talk about that. One of the bits we now want to begin to look at are what are the tolerance zones, because things go up and down month to month. Those could be normal trends. So actually, what are the zones where actually within that, we're okay on the performance? So where things are going above or below, you know, those are the bits we really need to look at. Why are we overperforming or why are we really underperforming? Rather than this is just normal business as usual tolerance. We're looking at how we can bring some of those bits into these reports as well. That will also help you identify what you can scrutinise more effectively. So how you use your time in the breadth of each of your panels to focus on things that really need doing. It'll also help us in looking further back to do better forecasting. And we all know that if we move towards 3-year settlements, and that's what the government has promised us, that being able to forecast is going to be really important because we won't be doing 12-month to 12-month, which is really hand-to-mouth and difficult to do long-term planning. We're going to be doing long-term planning, and we need to base that on an evidence base. So you'll be able to help us then, through scrutiny, look at what some of those long-term assumptions are, because that matters as well. I would like to highlight, having the opportunity today, some areas of significant progress against the top-level work of the council. So first of all, I'd like to start with community safety. And we've actually demonstrated some really strong partnership work with the police, particularly in addressing the challenges following the riots last August. And we delivered the vast majority of the recovery fund out to the community to help us to do the recovery work because of that strong partnership work we've done with the police to enable us to do things. And that was open to applications. So it wasn't just who's the favourite people to do things, but actually listening to what communities wanted. That was a really important bit and a demonstration of how we've done that. Our retention of the purple flag, awarding our evening and nighttime economy, is a testament to the commitment to maintaining high standards. And we're actively addressing antisocial behaviour through collaborative initiatives. And that's some of the stuff that Community Safety have been raising consistently with the police and with the Police and Crime Commissioner. We've had hotspot policing, and the Police and Crime Commissioner is now making antisocial behaviour a much higher priority for her in the Police and Crime Plan, which is good news. It shows the impact of our performance reporting and lobbying. Our highways maintenance team continues to deliver exceptional service. They've maintained 100% performance in fixing potholes within the agreed timescales. And while we acknowledge the constraints of reduced national funding from £4 billion in 2006 to half that amount by 2019, we're maximising our resources to maintain our road network effectively. In housing and planning, I'm proud to report that our planning team's outstanding achievements of 100% on-time determination for major development applications is not only impressive locally, it's impressive nationally as well, and should be applauded. We're making substantial progress on delivering affordable homes, and we're outperforming our SIPFA comparators. So whilst we know there is a housing crisis, the long-term actions that we've been taking are building through. And through Plan for Homes 4, we're maintaining this momentum while addressing the critical challenge of homelessness. And I know that I am due to come to the housing panel shortly to discuss homelessness in detail. And I have asked officers to liaise with the growth scrutiny panel to talk about coming and doing a review of the entire Plan for Homes 4 first year in the spring. And I hope that we'll be able to do that and look at more depth at the housing crisis. Our commitment to young people is evident in our comprehensive Children, Young People and Families Improvement Plan. We're seeing encouraging results with increased access to good and outstanding schools and a gradual decline in under-25s claiming universal credit. Our refreshed economic strategy of 2024 further supports these positive developments. Obviously, children's, I'm sure, will be stuff that will be talked about under risk and finance, but Cabinet has very strong reports on the current situation, and this week received another written report on children's finance. So we are looking at performance and what that means for risk and financing together as Cabinet. These reports will help you do that as well. In healthcare collaboration, we've achieved significant improvements in primary care access, with 83% of patients now seen within 2 weeks. A marked improvement from 63% in the spring, but still a long way to go. We will continue to put pressure on our NHS colleagues and through the Health and Wellbeing Board. And while we acknowledge challenges in dental care access, we're actively working with partners to address this and hope soon to be making some announcements about how the council is going to help dental access improve in the city. Safeguarding remains paramount across all services, and while we face high numbers of children in care and increasing adult safeguarding referrals, with 3,042 cases in quarters 1 and 2 of 24-25, we're strengthening our multi-agency approach and developing more efficient safeguarding pathways, particularly for cases involving self-neglect, a growing concern as people live longer, but also live in single households. Chair, this report reflects a growing commitment to clear presentation of performance data. It reflects achievements, awareness in areas requiring continued focus, and an ongoing willingness to be open about all of that. Our teams have demonstrated remarkable resilience and innovation in delivering services despite the challenges that are faced across the whole of the council and the sector. I propose that this report is noted as evidence of progress and commitment, and would welcome any comments on the structure and style and direction of travel of the presentation of performance data. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and for presenting that. And I know it's not easy to, you presented the overview, but obviously the detail can be sourced elsewhere. I do have a couple of questions, and if anyone else has a question, please indicate. Andy, could you please keep track of who's asking you? Could you please explain where it's titled in each column, previous and current? What are the data pit stops for those that information, please?
I'll ask the boss.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely, we can make that clearer, Chair. So previous performance is Q1 and the current is Q2. So that's Q1 of 24-25 and Q2 of 24-25. And
to clarify, these reports, the corporate management plan report is produced twice a year for elected members?
So yeah, through you, Chair. So the framework was amended last year to report twice per year to governance structures, broadly because many of the KPIs we're reporting on have very, very slight changes in 3 months. So they tend to be bigger across 6. So we want to make sure that, you know, what we're not doing is focusing on very, very slight movements, as Councillor Penberthy's referred to. These are very slight movements, and actually looking across a longer time series can often provide a better understanding of patterns or trends.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Murphy, please, question.
Mine is about building more homes. It says in this report that you aim to deliver at least 5,000 new homes in Plymouth over the next 5 years. Is that deliverable?
It's going to be really tough. I think, you know, we have a planning department that is delivering planning consents at the request of developers who are then not developing the consents that they get, which is frustrating because that's housing, and there are thousands of housing units with consent that developers aren't building in the city. So we're working to try and speed those up. We're working very closely with Homes England on what central Plymouth intensification could look like. How much that delivers in the next 5 years, or how much is really accelerated soon after, is part of the whole question there. But we are looking at thousands more homes in the city centre, and we are looking at you know, some of the urban fringes in terms of the joint local plan and whether we can bring some of those forward. The difficulty isn't necessarily our processes. The difficulty is in the broader marketplace, where increasing costs, lack of skilled labour availability is meaning that things are slowing down generically in the building industry, and we need work done that's beyond our capacity to bring more people into the sector and to try and drive some of the costs down, because otherwise things are just going to continue to be deemed not viable, even when, you know, they were at the start. And I've been talking to some of our housing associations who, when they started a project, had a QS quote, and by the time they get to tender stage, it's gone up by between 50 and 100%. Well, that changes the whole dynamic of how quickly you can deliver homes. So we've got lots of re-engineering and additional funding being sought to bring forward schemes that people are desperate to build. We also have an issue with businesses going bust. So our local SME sector was decimated post-COVID because of the impact of slowing in the supply chain meant that people weren't getting their cash flow through, and that has led to to closures. So actually there's fewer companies bidding for increasing amounts of work, and that is difficult because obviously it's not just the council, this is how we support others. So it's going to be tough, but we are working on it because we know the only way we will solve the homelessness crisis and the housing crisis is by ensuring that there are enough homes for people to live in, rather than people having to be in temporary accommodation pending their homes being built for them, or homes being built that means that the chain can move through.
Councillor Freeman, please.
Yeah, I have two very teeny questions, please. On the PCC investment in low carbon infrastructure, and it says in brackets 3-year average. So that is an annual figure under previous, which is Q1. So that is why there isn't a figure under current. Is that right?
I think there's a formatting error. Sorry, through you, Chair. I think there's a formatting error there. It's 3-year average, so it's an annual. It's a figure we report annually. It's not the annual figure.
And you had a second question?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
a little explanation, please, if that's okay. This will probably be one for David, I think, if that's all right, through you, Chair. Under the spending money wisely, it talks about total debt as a percentage of core spending power. I know there's like a summary towards the back of the paper that tries to explain a little bit about what those things mean, but can you just give me a little bit more explanation as to what that is? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You always come up with a great question, don't you? That
you do.
left of field, that whatever preparation. But right, so just catch me off guard for a second. This is a national indicator. I don't necessarily like it, but we work with it. So we obviously, with our capital programme and so on, we do have to go to the market to borrow. This is an indicator of how much, you know, percentage-wise we are spending. It's a key indicator in as much as we set ourselves internal targets because you don't want it to be running away. I think I read a quote from another council's budget meeting which said the more you spend on financing, the less you spend on providing services. So that's why it's a key indicator, and that's why MHCLG and the government are keen that we keep an eye on it. So basically it's how much are we borrowing, and then saying, is that affordable in terms of the percentage of the total spend?
Through you, Chair, just the reason that these measure, just to reiterate what David said, because yeah, he's not particularly happy with some of those KPIs. The reason that we have included those, these are the measures that are included in the OFLOG, the Office for Local Government, Data Explorer. It's part of the suite of indicators they use to measure local authorities against each other, which is why it's included in the papers.
And just as a practicality, and I'm sure the growth panel would say this is the case, one of the bits that the council has done over a long period of time, and actually on quite a cross-party basis, is look at how we can borrow to invest for long-term growth and income. And so, you know, if you wanted to grill David at the growth panel, he could talk about the impact of the investment we have made in commercial premises, not only in bringing jobs to the city and maintaining jobs in the city, but actually introducing an income stream, which means the entire Economic Development Directorate basically doesn't draw money from the council, it invests money into other council services. So we are using capital to create revenue, and obviously once the borrowing is paid off, that revenue will increase substantially. So it's a long-term view that was taken under the leaderships of Councillors Pengelly and Bowyer and Evans, you know, quite a long time ago, and that's actually been really important for the ongoing growth. So, you know, there are some of these bits that you might see we're against. We don't look like we're performing well, but it's actually because of the nature of decisions that have been taken. And one of those bits that I said go to your scrutiny panels to use these as tests is because when you drill down, there might be reason underneath for why we are not looking the right way. and I'm borrowing David there, is a lot to do with the way we have invested for long-term growth in the city, as well as long-term revenue income streams for ourselves.
David, did you want to come in to? Councillor Finn, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Regards to, you mentioned about 1,000 homes for the city centre. How many are going to be allowed via the permitted development route, or are they all going to come through full planning? And what indicators are being used with regard to the infrastructure that will be required to support such growth in the city centre, please?
We're currently working with Homes England to do a master plan on the city centre, which is the city centre and some of the immediate fringe areas, to look to see whether we could effectively create a new town in the city centre. So that is, it's not just 1,000, it is thousands and thousands of homes. In terms of long-term accommodation, we have about 800 accommodation units in the city centre. In the centre of Manchester, it's 8,000 or more. So you can see the difference. That means we're not just talking about permitted development, we're talking about redevelopment, and we're talking about the city centre, which is our high-rise zone in the joint local plan, actually being higher and looking at redevelopment that brings a lot more people living in the city centre. So it's not about what will this be or what will that be. It's actually about let's create a strategic master plan with key government departments who are going to invest in order to create that ongoing future. Obviously, the more we can put into the city centre, the less we need to build elsewhere to meet local housing need. So it saves suburban and green space. But it's also why we are putting substantial investment into public realm in the city centre, because that public realm is needed in advance of the housing coming in, and why a lot of work is not being seen by the public, because what's happening is underneath all of that, there's substantial work being done on things like sewage and water management, which costs a lot, but isn't very visible. So people say, oh, you're wasting all of this money, and actually it's about sustainable urban drainage that will allow for increased use. So there is an ongoing plan, but we are not yet at the point where we're able to reveal what that is, because the work is being done by our own internal teams with Homes England on what that might look like, and conversations being held across national government about how we can lever appropriate resources in. You might have spotted the Regional Director of Homes England in his New Year's message talked about the fact that Plymouth was the place to watch, because Plymouth was a definite place for substantial Homes England engagement, and that is predominantly around the city centre.
Thank you, Councillor Pember. And Councillor Finn, that was a good question, because it has a lot of answers leading to it. And in light of what you've just said, perhaps we'll consider that in our future work programme to see how we deal with that question.
I think obviously from our perspective in the panel, it's about the infrastructure. It's all right putting all these people in there, but we need the infrastructure investment at the same time, obviously, for it to work. You know, you're going to need your doctors, you're going to need your dentists, you're going to need your parking spaces, you're going to need.
So I recommend we add it to, at the end of this meeting, we'll consider where it goes in the work programme for that particular item, and then we'll discuss it at a future meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, if it'd be useful, happy to have a discussion afterwards, Councillor Finn, just to address any information requirements we might have, particularly in terms of indicators, as you mentioned in your original question. So we'll cover that at work programme at the end. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Pemberley, could you, on the keeping children and adults safe, it states that the average time to complete a Section 42 safeguarding inquiry, Liverpool South West, has decreased from 109 working days to 84.8. I work out that's about 7 weeks out of 5 weeks out of 22 weeks drop. Are you aware of a reason for that, or is that something the Health Committee could, Scrutiny panel could follow up, please?
And I think this is where we come back to my initial comment that actually when you come into the details, some of these I've been able to answer because they fall within my portfolio. This doesn't. I'm not involved in the management of safeguarding. That's the leader with the Cabinet Members for Adult Social Care and Children's Social Care, and both adults and children's panels might like to discuss safeguarding. I'm sure they both do on an ongoing basis, and I'm sure Cabinet Members and officers would be very happy to discuss those in those panels.
I appreciate that, and perhaps that's something where we can plan at the end for it to be a piece of work in the relevant scrutiny panel. Or
Through you, Chair. So the Section 42 assessments relate to adult social care functions delivered by Live Well, who we partner with to deliver some of those services. There's been quite a focus on some of these areas and reducing waiting times. I am aware that the health panel receive a detailed performance report, probably providing probably around 10 times more information around this particular area than is in the corporate plan report. So would very much recommend that health scrutiny review that the Section 42 figures are within that health scrutiny report.
thank you, Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. The strategic risk register, Q2.
Well,
we-
through you, Chair, we've not quite come to that,
Oh,
Councillor.
right, sorry, I wasn't sure if that was part of the same
But
paper.
if questions have dried up on the corporate plan, I'm happy to introduce the risk report. Thank you, Chair.
So ahead of yourself. You probably got the questions for next year already as well, haven't you? Could I ask Councillor Riley, please? I'm really pleased to see in this management report that it states the citywide VOG bystander project has been commissioned. Are you able to enlighten our board on what that involves, please? The citywide VOG bystander project has been commissioned to develop community and school-based active bystander intervention training. Or is that something that's due to come up at the appropriate panel?
It can absolutely come up at the appropriate panel because it's something that's rolling out across, I mean, it's everywhere at the moment. So I'm not entirely sure how to answer your question right now, but we can absolutely talk about it in our scrutiny.
Your report is probably good questions. If there aren't any other questions, I can draw this report section to a close. Is that okay? And I thank you, Councillor Penworthy, for presenting it, answering the questions you're able to in good detail, and actually for prompting us to explore things further in other panels. So thank you, and all the officers who contributed to it as well. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And then we go on to the risk register. This is your moment, Councillor Freeman. Hold back.
Through you, Chair, just by way of introduction. So currently 18 risks on the strategic risk register. This report covers us to the end of Q2, so end of September 2024. Risk register is currently being updated at the moment for Q3. So as I said, 18 on register, 3 have been removed. Those are detailed in your report. What we're trying to provide you in reporting now is an understanding of our risk appetite and how our risk sits against our currently agreed risk appetite, which is in the strategic, I can't even remember what it's called now. We've got a strategy. The risk and opportunity strategy, apologies. So the risk appetite is set down in our strategy, and we're just trying to give you a visual representation of how those 18 risks currently sit against our risk appetite. In the tables, you'll find the Q1 risk score and the Q2 risk score and mitigations that have been undertaken during that period. Just to highlight, I know cybersecurity often gets mentioned because it is a very high risk. It's a high risk because our advice from government is to maintain it as a high risk. We are constantly under cyber attack, so we need to remain vigilant, which is why it remains a high risk on the risk register. Chair, happy to deal with any questions. I'm aware, though, it's 10:10. We've yet to complete a finance report in this section. Thank you, Chair.
You've got one question.
One
Yes, please.
question.
Yeah,
One
go
question.
ahead.
So under the strategic risk, please correct me if I've got a bit amiss on this, please, Ross. With the pay issues there had been for was it the PCC care workers that are employed?
So that's the care at home team.
Yeah, sorry. Has that been resolved? And if not, should it not be on the risk register? Because it's a potential financial risk to the council?
It could be a potential financial risk to the council. I'm not aware whether it's been resolved or not. I'm not part of those discussions, so I wouldn't be able to provide any update on that. Issues appear on the strategic risk register if they're likely to undermine the overall operation of the council. That's the strategic risk. I have no doubt that it appears in operational risk registers within adult social care. If it needs to be escalated to this level so it can be managed by a corporate management team, that's what will happen.
I think I would just add that the strategic risk register does have the overarching making sure that we're living within our financial envelope. Of course, this would be a monetary ask, so that would be part of that. But as Ross has said, if it were to become an ongoing issue or a bigger issue, then certainly we would consider putting it on the strategic register.
Thank you. It's good to note as well how many have been stepped down as well, such as the recruitment, the social care capacity. So that's really pleasing. But also the risks do represent what's happening nationally. It's, you know, this sadly because of the budgets as they've been over the last decade plus. This is what's led to many of the risks being presented here today. Councillor Finn.
Yeah, obviously we've had a few problems of audit and governance. I think they're being ironed out. Obviously, with regard to information, we haven't been properly able to scrutinise a lot of the budget and the medium-term financial plan, etc. Because at the meeting before last, unfortunately, the papers came out 10 o'clock at night, and we were not. So therefore, we weren't able to give a qualified opinion on those, and in effect offered a disclaimer on that. But built into that, now looking back at those papers. What we did notice is that one thing that was picked up by the auditor was the amount of working reserves we have. And why I bring that today, yesterday on ITN News, I don't know whether anybody saw it, they made a category that went out to the public that 4 million have been taken out of reserves to meet the medium-term financial plan. Now that came out on ITN News yesterday morning. Now, obviously, the auditor actually picked up that our financial reserves, working reserves, are extremely low. What are we doing to mitigate that? Is there any truth in what was said yesterday? And also, can you just explain, when it says here under finance, obviously, it's a major risk. The council's expenditure exceeds the resources available to meet the expenditure within the medium-term financial statement. Can you just clarify that statement, please?
Would some of this be best considered at next week's budget scrutiny? Is it more relevant then, or is there a quick answer no?
I'm quite happy if you want just a quick. I just need to, Councillor Finn, you asked me to clarify. Are you saying to clarify what the risk is that the council's expenditure exceeds resources, or the mitigation? Sorry.
I think a bit of both, really. Obviously, there's concerns regarding the working reserves that are low, which was picked up by the auditor, what we did, and about the addressing of that. But also, just to clarify the statement, the problem is we haven't got any page numbers on the printed sheets. That the council's expenditure exceeds the resources available to meet the medium-term financial plan. Can you just clarify what that statement means? So we're not sure.
No, I'm quite happy to. I think, Councillor Finn, it's a very valid question, but just bearing in mind what I was going to say when we get onto the finance monitoring, that we've got 2 days of budget scrutiny next week, so we can go into that detail. But I'll repeat probably some of what I said at Audit and Governance yesterday, which is absolutely, it's Grant Thornton as our external auditors, it's for them to give an opinion. Their opinion is that our reserves need to be built up. I always maintain that if you look, and certainly in these documents, we follow national trends. We're just starting from a lower base. But if you go back 14 years, that's been the case. So if there was a news bulletin yesterday saying that we are using 5 million of reserves to balance next year's budget, that's absolutely correct. That was in the budget papers that were approved. That was approved at Cabinet on Monday, so those papers are out in the public domain. You have got those in your pack for scrutiny next week. Happy to have that conversation about the use of reserves and whatever. So obviously it appears on here, it's not just a Plymouth issue, it's a national issue that we all recognise that we need more resources. But again, next week we can explore the impact of the latest local government settlement and what it means for Plymouth and what that might mean going forward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, for clarifying that.
No. Okay.
Right, through you, Chair. So just to preempt, because I'm sure there will be a question of, this paper came out late, so I will apologise. That's my error, not the team's error. I was hoping that the timing of this meeting might give me an opportunity to actually put in month 9, latest position, which is what we tried to get into the scrutiny arena. The timings didn't allow that, but what I can tell you is that we haven't finalised the report, but the numbers are looking very much the same as what we've got in front of us, which is the month 8 statement. So it does show that we are projecting an overspend at the end of March of 2.5 million. I think we need to put that into context. I say most years that if we get to sort of 1.5, 2 million by Christmas, we're on the downward slope to get us to the March position that we need to get to. It's not quite there, but it's in that ballpark. I think the other thing I'd say to you is, if memory serves me right, the last time I came here and talked to you in some detail, it was all the way back looking at month 5 report, where the report was slightly different and it's been changed following comments from yourselves and from others. It was talking about 16.7 million of risks that might be facing us, of which I think it said 7 million had not been mitigated at that point. So if we took the 7 million as the position back in month 5, the fact that we've got to month 8 and we're now at 2.5, we're making great inroads into that position. So I won't go into too much detail other than say you've got the report in front of you. You can see that I would be extremely nervous if it was maybe one directorate that was struggling, but this is a reflection of everything that's going on nationally. It's adult social care, it's homeschool transport, it's in children's services, it's the placement costs and so on. I'd also point out, and I'm not saying this just because my 2 learned colleagues are sat with me, if you look at the Growth Directorate, they are actually coming in under budget, so the work that they are doing is again underpinning everything that we need to do to support the vulnerable people of Plymouth. I'll leave it there and obviously take any questions, but I would just reiterate that we do have a marathon session coming towards us next week, where you will go into every line and every detail. So you might want to hold your fire. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. On your report, David, it says that a children's brokerage team has been recruited to strengthen market engagement and placement finding. Can you just tell me how that's going? Has it been successful? Have we been able to recruit? Are we recruiting more?
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I would say that's probably been debated in great detail at the Children's Committee, and can I suggest that we pick that up next week? Recruitment generally is an issue for all of us, but we are making particular efforts within the Children's Directorate because of the importance of it. But can we maybe hold that question and pick that up with David Haley next week as one of your questions? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. New phrase for me, hard facilities management. Okay, every day's a learning day. It wasn't as exciting as I thought it might be. I don't know what I was thinking it was going to be, but it's the Guildhall's closure and the loss of income that there would be for the duration. Would that have been...
Shall I do it? It's actually my portfolio. Corporate property traditionally has been split here into 2 different sections. So the hard management will be things like panels falling off, systems breaking down. Soft facilities management are things like cleaning and toilet rolls and light bulbs. So there's the bits that are the sort of physical bits about the buildings, and then there's the bits about making those bits go on. So the concierge service is a soft service, not a hard service, whereas replacing the roof, we hope, is a hard service and not a soft one.
you replace the soft one with a hard.
Yeah.
So if I might, Chair, just because I want to say this, because I always think of radio stations when I hear hard FM and soft FM, but that's an old thing now, isn't it? It's all done. Anyway, basically, I think it's what Councillor Bertie said. If you think hard, it's the bricks and mortars, it's the buildings, it's the construction work. If you think soft, it's what's going on inside, scrutiny, toilets, maintenance, and those kind of things.
But where it says pressure, hard facilities management, and a loss of income from Guildhall closure, is the £2.5 million represents what? please?
It's all sorts of things.
Okay.
Last year we right-sized a whole load of budgets. We didn't look at corporate estate because at that point we didn't actually have any director long-term looking at it out because there'd been a number of changes. So we weren't able to deep dive. We have been deep diving into the corporate estate over the last few months and working with Jens. The budget proposals you'll be discussing next week actually give us more funding for the corporate estate and hard and soft FM. Practicalities are, a cliff walk collapses, and we need to deal with it. A roof needs replacing, and we need to deal with it. We all know that we have not been long-term strategically managing our corporate estate. We have actively started doing that. There's all sorts of work already in progress this year. I'm meeting sometimes weekly, certainly fortnightly, with teams looking at details of this. We've been delving into things to bring cost into place. We're looking at what we might imaginatively do going forward. But this year we hadn't right-sized the budgets. We've had some slipways go, we've had some cliff walks go, we've had some wharfs go. All of that costs money. And when you start putting it in emergency, then we need to deal with it. Obviously, doing the Guildhall, value engineering the budgets that were set out at the point pre-COVID when we got all the funding, and during COVID when we got the funding, building costs have rocketed. So we've had to value engineer that. That meant delays to programmes, which means that we can't actually commit to taking bookings because we don't want to take a booking and not be able to deliver it. So there's those sorts of things that it's quite complex, and we are actively working on it now in order to be able to deliver a better service for the city, make sure we have an estate that meets our needs and doesn't meet the needs of the city 10, 20, 40, 50, 100 years ago, but meets the needs of us going forward. So all of that work is in hand, but this year we hadn't right-sized the budgets last year. And so we are on a catch-up, but those conversations with David have been ongoing, and we have been able to put more money into the budget proposal next week.
Councillor Ricketts?
Yeah, with this report, I haven't even received this.
It was sent out last night or yesterday,
When was it sent?
7 o'clock.
Last night. It's not very good, is it?
It's not ideal, but as we've mentioned earlier on now, David explained why he held back, thinking there would be month 9 in there. But the information for next week's already been published, so greater detail for next week's discussion, which kind of supplements
I'm just saying it's not about. I've got 2 kids. I didn't look at anything last night. We can't really talk about it.
Yeah. But fortunately, the budget the finance scrutiny, and we got the dedicated time next week, so that will help on this occasion. But we take on board your comment. Can I ask as well, under Adult Social Care Communities Director, it states about there are savings on staff recruitment. Can we have assurance that when staff recruitment is frozen, it doesn't place an undue pressure on the other staff in that service, which on top of typical sickness and absence and so on, doesn't escalate to a stress level that's caused because of staff not having to, being frozen in terms of their recruitment?
Through you, Chair, I think it's something that is probably best addressed next week, if I'm honest. I'm not sure that David will have the exact answer for you right now. And we'll certainly have Councillor Dan, who's in charge of HR, to help you next week.
Thank you, because it's a cross-directorate issue, isn't it? We just need to be mindful that we're confident. Please. And finance monitoring. I recommend that the reports for, it says January 25 there, noted. All happy? Thank you. They're noted. And thanks very much. Not just for the compilation, but for the work that goes on behind them. Thank you. Following the full council meeting in November, 2 motions and notices. It was they were voted to be forwarded to the Scrutiny Management Board, and the first one is about achieving value for money from council assets.
Through you, Chair. So just this is probably the first time that the Management Board's had a motion referred to it for some years. We've had experience of it in the last sort of 18 months where the Health Scrutiny Committee reviewed a motion around defibrillators. What I propose is we take the same approach now as we did then, which is to invite either the proposer or the seconder to say a few words about the motion before opening up for a panel discussion. The reason that these motions are referred to is to enable you to have a discussion about them in this room, which is a little bit more free-flowing, let's say, than our council meetings. So we don't have the proposer for achieving value for money from council assets. We do have the seconder. I didn't know if Councillor Ricketts wanted to say anything before panel discussed the motion.
Yeah, thank you. I kind of assumed this would be taken care of as such, as in we agreed at a council and it was going to be referred to the scrutiny to look at the council assets. So I was hoping for a paper that it would all be operating smoothly as the council machine that we are, and it'd all be like an item of council assets, and we would be able to scrutinise that and what we were keeping or what we were thinking about selling off potentially.
Through you, Chair, it's just the motion itself that gets referred for discussion, because essentially the debate is not yet closed from council, because we've not come to a closure around the motion at all. Chair, I think we've had a discussion about the contents of the motion on notice, particularly in reference to budget scrutiny next week. We will have, and in the pack that you've got for next week covers our capital programme. My suggestion, therefore, Chair, having Councillor Ricketts' input there, might just be to recommend that this is dealt with at the scrutiny, at budget scrutiny next week, if members would be content.
Yeah, sorry, I thought, my understanding was, was that we would just have it as an item, as council, a list of council assets. Well, it seemed very clear to me.
Can I ask a question about the sensitive nature of that information, because it's commercially valuable, isn't it? So would we be able to have that information?
If you are to look at the response to each of those points you raised, and Councillor Nicholson in the motion that was to be brought here, is the feeling is the working group is unnecessary because performance and capital schemes is routinely reported to the Cabinet, routinely reported to full council, and to Scrutiny Management Board. Particularly will be discussed next week as well, so there'll be opportunity for questions then. And equally, the question you raised about querying the best value, that is a requirement of the council anyway, and the method of disposal is a matter to the relevant service director to agree, and then this is transacted through the land and property team in the economic development service. There is a new capital handbook which is published in 24. The capital programme officer group has established that, and budget scrutiny, as a monitoring officer has said, we'll be looking at all these sessions next week. I don't know if Karim would want to come in on this.
Yeah, I think you've outlined the process, and I think given the process that's in place, I think that gives you the opportunity for members to do the right scrutiny. So I don't see why you would have an additional working group.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, the council's crazy busy, it runs quickly, yeah? So I just assumed that when we had the council meeting, the highest level, full council, yeah, we voted on something, didn't we? Yeah,
So-
we had the motion and then we voted on something. There was a proposal, there was an action that was being taken. I just want, that should be followed through now.
Through you, Chair, that's what's happening now. The motion on notice was referred in its totality from council to this committee, where the discussion continues as per the rules of debate and the constitution. Now, I'm more than happy, Chair, that it seems to me that what Councillor Ricketts is looking for is a discussion around assets and around capital. That will be completed next week. My suggestion to the committee is to note the motion on notice, cover it at budget scrutiny next week, and from there, Councillor Ricketts, should there be further requirements for additional working groups, that might be a recommendation that the budget scrutiny committee makes. I understand where you're coming from, just to clear up that process issue, but I think we can deal with it next week if members are content.
Councillor Leggett?
Thank you, Chair. Just on the point of clarity then, if this goes to the meeting next week, if there's a further recommendation to be added to that, can that be brought next week or can we deliberate that now, please?
A further recommendation to the motion on notice? Is that what you're suggesting? Well, I think essentially by considering the issues next week, you essentially complete what the motion on notice has asked you to do. There will be, next week, you will be able to make whatever recommendations you wish to make as a result of your consideration of two days of information. So it may well be part of that, it might not be. But you'll certainly have the opportunity to make additional recommendations next week. Absolutely, Councillor.
Excuse me, is the matter of, let's get this, let's get the right page, capital funding for the Plymouth Airport site. Councillor Legger, you proposed this, do you want to bring it out?
Thank you, Chair. Members will be pleased to hear I'm not going to rehearse the political arguments again. I'm sure you heard enough of me at Council last week, so let's move forward with it. Council has already set the direction of travel with this, pardon the pun, being an airport. On the 29th of January 2024, Council agreed in earnest to start the process to regain the site at the airport. The motion on notice that was put forward on the 29th of January 2024 was passed by Council, and whilst we cannot talk about the legality of the process, we are aware that the notice of forfeiture will expire, the notice will expire next month. What we do need to look at now, of course, is economic development. ED is a brilliant department set up in 2009 with the overview of Mr. Draffin down there, who does an excellent job. It's got a rolling sort of £30 million a year sort of grant funding project. And I'm sure it's within their remit and their great capability to look at future funding opportunities for the airport. This would mean, of course, funding a hybrid operation at the airport, not merely setting up new aircraft, but also for helicopters and drones. So today, I think the recommendation is straightforward. The recommendations are not political, they're not onerous, because there's no time frame on this. It's merely a concise plea that we do look at the recommendations, which is to ask ED to go into the and no doubt there might be a resume of work that's already done to date, to look at the funding available for the project, and secondly, for the leader of the council to write to the aviation minister, which I do believe, Mr. Jago, that that's all possibly already been done. So I'll leave it through to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lugger. And I think it's important what you say about allowing due process to happen, because with the aviation, the least turbulence we have, the better we'll have. We should-
waiting all
well,
day to say that.
and we don't want everything to be up in the air, but we'd like a safe landing. Ding ding. I'll bring that back. Right. But you are right. The leader has written to the Minister for Aviation, and I'm sure the leader will be happy to forward a letter to you if you request it. Thank you. Can I hand over to Kareem as well for an update?
Chair, I'm just going to make 2 points if I can. Firstly, economic development is constantly reviewing what grants are available, opportunities. At the moment, as far as the aviation sector is concerned, the grants that are available are for innovation technology. So we monitor it constantly. And then secondly, there's a copy of the letter from the leader to the Secretary of State seeking the exploration of what can be done to bring aviation back to the city. So if anybody wants a copy, it's here available for you.
Thank you very much, Kareem. Councillor Murphy?
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Lugger put this motion forward, the 2 recommendations have actually been completed. So our Economic Development Department is always looking for funding. So of course they're going to be looking for that funding, and the leader is written a letter. So I really don't know why we really need to be discussing this now. We just need to note this and just move on because those actions have actually been done.
Councillor Lugger?
I fully take on board what Councillor Murphy said, and certainly one limb of the recommendation has been dealt with by the letter which the leader's kindly written to the Minister. I still want some sort of assurance, though, that the second limb, whilst you take on board what you're saying, Councillor, about that the department's constantly looking for funding, I'd like an assurance that this project is going to be looked at specifically. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
I'll bring in David at this point, please. Can I ask for recently appointed members, if you could explain or refresh them your role?
Yeah, sure. So I'm David Draffan, the Council's Director for Economic Development. So that includes all of the economic levers in one place, including estates, strategic projects, culture, traditional economic team, Freeport, National Marine Park, and a bunch of other stuff. So, I mean, addressing that point directly, Andy, we're really good at getting funding. In the last financial year, we generated 102.04 million of grant funding for the city. We're in benefit of that in contract already. So we're really good at it. We have a dedicated funding function. So we have a dedicated grant funding officer, and we are subscribing to all of the national grant finding software services. So there is someone all day, every day doing this, and they send us details. So right now, I can tell you that as Kareem alluded to it, the Aerospace Technology Institute Fund, the ATI, is live, their second batch. There's 975 million available, but it's available for businesses doing innovation, particularly around new propulsion systems. So it's not funding that's available for infrastructure for core airports. The last time there was the CAA Airport Development Advisory Fund, which has closed now, which was for general aviation. But you were only eligible to apply for it if you were in control of an airport that was operating. So you had to be in control of the land first, and most of these infrastructure funding, that's a requirement. Hence, our primary strategy is once you get control of the land, then that opens up the opportunities. But you can't access the funding without control. That's where we've found ourselves. We did benefit from 5 days consultancy support from the Airport Advisory Fund back in 2000. And obviously the lobbying goes on. That includes a series of meetings we had with DFT. So if you're looking for assurance, if there's an airport fund that becomes available or this capital, I can guarantee you we'll be aware of it and we will flag it through the shadow portfolio holders, the NOR portfolio holders. And in fact, just to reassure all of you, when that motion came up, I did an immediate search and I did another immediate search this week, and the information I'm giving you is current. So hopefully that reassures you. If it's there, we'll know about it. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Any more questions? Councillor Riggins.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit confused on the consistency of this issue because apart from myself, full council voted for a net zero policy by 2030. So I'm completely confused for the city, that is, how we keep talking about the airport for aviation. I don't understand. Unless we put electric behind everything, it doesn't make any sense why the council would be against its own policy.
Through you, Chair. The reason it's with us is because 2 elected members made a motion on notice at council. So, you know, we'll follow the constitution and discuss it as required. It's a choice of elected members to enter motions into council.
But also, as has been said at full council and here today, it's new technologies will actually reflect the net zero mission, not emissions.
Public might be very confused by what we do as a council.
We're ready for recommendations. No. Recommendation would be that
Well, through you, Chair, given the discussion that you've had already today, it seems sensible to me to congratulate the Economic Development Department for undertaking the work that they have done.
Yeah.
And note the leader has written a letter to the Minister as required. If members are happy with those as recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
now we go on to the quick item, English devolution white paper. We had it's not a papered agenda item. If you're pleased to know, we had a meeting last week. As the leader committed to full council that people will be updated as and when is necessary. Group leaders, I know you've appreciated having the update, as well as full council when decisions made. But guaranteed, all sorts of people are working behind the scenes to have a good result for Plymouth and its people. Okay.
Through
Any comment?
through you, Chair, just on the white paper, clearly we were anticipating a local government white paper, which is why we took some proactive action to get it on your agenda. I don't think we expected the timescales we received when we received the white paper, so it has somewhat been subsumed by the council discussion. We will bring further updates back to Scrutiny in the future. It's going to be really important that Scrutiny is involved in how the white paper is implemented, both in Plymouth and beyond. But at this point, we've got no further updates from Thursday, even though things are changing on a daily basis. Thank you, Chair.
On item 7, budget scrutiny, key lines of inquiry. As we've mentioned throughout today, we have the budget scrutiny next week. A timetable would have been sent out to you in terms of the sessions. And for those of you new to the process, which many of us were last year, this is an opportunity for our cabinet colleagues to present the work that was planned during the last year and its consequences budgetary, what things have been able to be fulfilled, what savings have been made, what opportunities are there to invest for what's best, but equally looking at critically next year's budget and to see what does that mean for our city. Because we're cross panels, it's good because we have opportunity to comment on areas of city business that we don't normally associate ourselves with directly through our own panels. It's very important that all members are there for the 2 days. You can't do a part-time or a job share arrangement because there is a common thread running through the 2 days, which leads to recommendations at the end that we would make to Cabinet. The paperwork was published last night. I would advise having a few short sessions over the next week to read those rather than trying it all in one go, to fit in with family commitments, work commitments and all sorts. But it is important that we kind of familiarise ourselves with those and critically take Councillor Freeman's lead is ask questions and never assume that a question is, excuse the word, daft. Okay, thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Are we going to have physical papers? Because I I haven't got a laptop. Well, I have got a laptop, but it doesn't work.
Through,
And I can't read it on my phone.
well, through you, Chair. First of all, Councillor Murphy, let's talk about your laptop later, and we'll try and get that fixed for you. In terms of papers, yes, absolutely. That's what I've requested from the team. I'm fully aware that this is a large set of papers that you may need to sort of spread out in front of you and you know, be able to make those linkages and so on. So absolutely, we'll provide paper. I think this session was just to eke out any key lines of inquiry if members had them, just so we can make sure that we're prepped for that next week.
Thank you. Can I just ask when those papers will be available? The reason why I'm asking is because I work, and obviously I don't spend a lot of time down at the council house. So to be able to pick up those papers, I just need to know when they will be available.
I will find out. I imagine it's going to be either yesterday or this morning, but I'll need to double check, Councillor. All right, I'll get onto that for you there.
That's good comment, because the font is small in some of the charts as well, so you do need it, and for some work, I know we've got net zero, so some work you do need a bit of paper to scribble on as well, so I appreciate you asking that. Councillor
Yeah, just follow up on what Pauline said. Can I have a hard copy as well, please?
I'll have one, yeah. Any lines of inquiry of the budget process that you may already have from recent times, or from what you may have read already from today, that you want to be people to flag up?
Chair, just a quick thing. Ross, can you just email us when they're ready to be collected, please? Thank you, mate. Thank you.
I'll kick off. There will obviously be pressure points, such as children's social care, adult social care, homelessness. And these words could be used in any council chamber in the land, so it's not a Plymouth issue. We've got to be careful with that, but I'm also confident we've got Plymouth people who are working hard to address the issue, because what the pressure points are dealing with real people, and real people are dynamic, so their needs change and have to be addressed. So therefore it'll be important next week to learn about that and appreciate that. But our critical role is, okay, what are we doing about it, and why and how? And that's what. When you're looking at your papers, I would suggest that you say, okay, what difference will this make for Plymouth people, whether they live here or work here or visit here? Councillor Riley.
I think, obviously I didn't ask any questions today because the Cabinet Member for Children's and staff isn't here. But I do think there is an absolute need to have a deep dive into the staff retention and recruitment, especially where children's services is concerned, because the budget pressure on that is incredible, and it doesn't go away. So that's something I will be looking into.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, anything else of that nature would be helpful to hear from members, because, you know, forewarned is forearmed. We can make sure that, you know, when portfolio holders and directors are appearing here, they're providing you with the information that you want to hear. Now, I do appreciate that sometimes you might want to keep your questions under wraps until the day itself. But if you do want to highlight any particular areas, then please do let us know. I believe Councillor O'Reilly's got more.
I mean, if you're going to give me the room, then I'll take it. I would also like to know a little bit more about the berry tool and things like that we're supposedly using to reduce sending our young people outside, or, you know, all of those things that we discuss in scrutiny every single time. Same questions over and over again, unregistered placements, that kind of thing. That's going to be quite important and high on my agenda too. Thank you.
I guess we'll be informed in some of the answers with what a new government is setting out as well, which for many of us gives us great hope compared to last year. It's not easy, we know there's no magic wand, but at least, well,
Better speak to Rachel.
I don't know my first name. Mr. Ricketts.
Thank you, Chair. I think not to be too simplistic about it, but where we focus in our question is the overspend. Wherever we've got the big red areas, you know, that it's budget, it's figures, it's budget scrutiny. I know there's wider sort of context issues, but we're looking at, you know, this is proper maths, isn't it? It's like, so that's where we should be going to focus our minds. What would you say are the top 3 areas for overspend in the council? That's where we should be starting.
The ones I mentioned, the ones in red, basically. And I do appreciate its numbers, but it's what we're doing with those numbers as well. That's the critical thing. So it would be children's services, in terms of children's social care, looked after children and so on, homeschool transport and special needs, adult social care, homelessness. And there are established plans that have been agreed by council to mitigate against some of these pressures. So it's not just against what are we doing that could be different, but how is what we've decided to do as a council working out? Because some things don't just, some things like a 2-3 longer term programme to get to where we want to be. So it's about progress on the journey of change, but also identifying things that might have added an extra pressure in the meantime. I don't know, David, do you want to, have I summed up the pressures there? You've probably got other pressures
I think
that you'd want to name.
through you, Chair, there are pressures in the budget, we know that, but the sessions have been built around those key areas. So if you look at the timetable, we've deliberately split it up such that you've got the chance to go into detail into adult social care, into the homelessness and the emergency bed and breakfast, children's social care, and what I would hope is the outcome from next week's meeting is not to go down into the weeds about how much does a bus fare cost per child or anything like that. It's more about the strategic view of, so we know there's an issue, taking children out of Plymouth to schools, it costs money. What are we doing as a council to reduce that cost and alleviate that cost? So what are our plans in sufficiency, new schools, whatever? And with homelessness, as the chair has said, we've put a programme in place. The questions need to be, have we put the right programme in place? Is it delivering as we expected? And then, so that's kind of attacking the here and now of trying to solve a problem, but then you need to be thinking about what are we doing from a preventative point of view to actually stop that demand and reduce that demand. So I think you've covered all the right areas there.
And as well as the cabinet members, there will also be council officers here as well to respond to our questions and queries. Councillor Finn?
Yeah, it was just something that was brought up yesterday about continuing healthcare assessments. Obviously, the NHS are kicking people out of hospital without the prerequisite funding going forward, and that burden seems to be coming on us as a council. I know we've sort of said yesterday we'll be looking at discussing it in another forum, but wouldn't it be appropriate at budget scrutiny for the cabinet member to look into to make sure that the NHS is actually paying it its way and the burden's not being put on the council? It's like, in simple terms, when somebody's discharged from hospital that has needs, that could have dementia or whatever, a continuing healthcare assessment should be carried out in the hospital prior to them leaving. But what's been happening is they've been kicking them out and then squabbling about and having the assessments afterwards, sometimes months later, which is causing huge confusion to whether liability rests with the council, the individual, or the NHS. Because 9 times out of 10, if the need is met, the NHS does pay the funding, say, for the care, regard to the care homes. So there's a huge amount of money involved for everybody, every discharge at Derriford Hospital, somebody that would come under our adult care budgets.
Through you, Chair. Having worked in NHS commissioning and local government, continuing healthcare has been a difficult issue for some time. It's absolutely appropriate to discuss the impact of that process and the decision making with the cabinet member and with the officers involved. Clearly, though, the operation of continuing healthcare assessments is NHS responsibility along with local government. We don't have anyone from the NHS coming next week at this time. We can certainly make those inquiries if you're asking us to see if we can get someone along with Gary to discuss those issues. But yeah, it seems perfectly reasonable that you discuss an issue which impacts upon the bottom line of the council.
Yeah, Chair, can I just follow up on that? Yeah, I totally agree. Because obviously if somebody's kicked out and the nursing care is, say, £1,000 a week, if you had 20 people, that's 20 grand before you start. And it's just, I suppose, I know years ago we used to have a social worker in the hospital, in the discharge bay, that used to sort all that out before people come out. So
Yeah, I would say we've heard what you've suggested. We'll take that and frame a question around that, and then we get the and Ross will endeavour to get somebody, if need be, somebody extra to provide the answers for that and comment. Councillor Riley.
Yeah, I haven't seen the budget papers things yet, but I will be asking questions about the temporary accommodation and VOG, like domestic abuse and things like that. I think that's quite important too, because the government has said that they will halve this. So I just wonder what we're going to be doing.
Okay, thank you. And as David says, the timetable for next week gives balance to the type of area that needs greatest attention as well, in terms of questions and scrutiny.
So through you, Chair, that I know members have only just received the papers for next week. The timetable has just been amended slightly due to cabinet member availability, so we've had to swap around a couple of sessions. I think we initially shared the timetable October, I think. So there has been some changes, but all of the same people come in with the same officers and with the same information. So if there is anything that you pick up between now and next week, please do let me know. If there's additional information you need before the end of the week, please do let me know. Ideally with as much notice as possible, but we'll happily go away. So if anything arises that you wish to look into or provide an answer on, we'll go away and do that for you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, at the beginning of the meeting, as usually happens, the finance cabinet man normally gives us an idea for what the council tax rise will be.
Yeah.
That will continue, yeah?
Yes.
That is yet, or is he going to announce it at the beginning of the meeting?
So through you, Chair. So session one, as always, will be the leader giving an overview of the budget and the year ahead, and probably looking backwards a little bit, and I will be in attendance, as will the Chief Executive. In terms of setting the council tax, as you know, Councillor Ricketts, it's not my decision, it's your decision as elected members, and that decision comes through at the February council meeting where we just concentrate on the budget and setting the council tax. But of course, there's a draft budget that's balanced at the moment, and that does include 2.99% council tax and 2% adult social care precept. But that is to balance the budget as it stands, but that's not a decision because we haven't got to that full council meeting yet. But that will all be discussed, I'm sure, at that session. Can I just ask, sorry, is that okay, Councillor Ricketts?
It was what I was thinking, but thank you for clarifying. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? I know there's been a lot of talk this morning about vacancies and making sure that we're not sort of shooting ourselves in the foot, if that's the expression you can use these days. Just the availability of the service director for HR. I'm wondering if you want to have an overview of what are we doing in terms of recruitment and making sure that we're not, foolishly holding vacancies. And we could do that in the first session and invite the director to come along. I'm just conscious that if you want to do it in adults and in children's, you're going to keep asking him to come back. It's probably going to be the same lines of inquiry, but that's for you, not for me.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy, do you want to come in?
I'll tell you what I would be kind of like interested in, David, is how many agency staff we have and how much that costs us. If that could be available, please. It is in the paperwork. Okay.
What we've tried to do, committee, is pick up from the comments from previous meetings. So, for instance, you will notice when you look at the pack that in the capital programme we have actually appended the capital programme in its entirety, and that's one of those that usually comes in as a supplementary, but it's published, it's out there. So and all the data about HR, absence, etc. is all included because those are the themes that you pick up on.
Councillor Freeman first. Okay.
I'm really happy that we have that breakdown of the wage bill, because it has frustrated me over the years where the first thing we seem to think of is cutting services, when actually the first thing I believe we should look at is the wage bill at the first point of contact. Every cabinet member should be going through their budget, okay, with a fine-tooth comb, and we need to be assured that's been done before we start looking at cutting services.
Can we move now on to work programme for any committee chairs to update us on the work programme for their area? Anything to report? Councillor Riley?
I'm happy to go. So we have councillor members of Scrutiny, Children's Scrutiny, have been invited to the MASH. I will be attending in a week or so, and I believe you've already stated your place, which is pretty cool. But I also wanted to bring here I've asked for a select committee with regards to children and family services. I've had a meeting with David and Jake to see, because this year I've asked some questions that don't fall within my terms of reference, and I would really like to discuss them. So I'd really like to discuss things like self-harm and well-being and suicide and things like that that don't fall into our terms of reference. They come under health and adult social care, and there are some bits as well that do come under communities and housing. So I do have the form that has been submitted, I believe. And I would also like in that to be able to bring in young people's voices, so for them to attend to this select committee so we can hear what they would like, and also outside agencies, that organisations that work with young people that we may or may not partner with, or we may or may not work with, just to see what is going on in the city, especially when we're looking at things like in the next scrutiny, we're going to be looking at female violence, young female violence. I've asked for that to also be kind of put into a select committee as well.
Through you, Chair, just in terms of the select committee, I'm sorry, I've not read the project document quite yet. I think Jake does have a copy. I've got a copy here. Yeah. More than happy to circulate amongst members and see where we can go from there. Chair, I'm just looking to see in terms of membership where you're looking to pull that membership from. Is it all? Would you make an invitation to all non-exec members to take part and make a selection from there?
I'm open to. I've not done it before. I've not requested it before. I've attended a select committee, both health and adult social care, where children's were invited on the second day. So I'm open to discussion and advice on that, absolutely. But I just think for me, when I sit in the chair, I think there are lots of things that come to us that we can't discuss. Children's well-being, children's services, they kind of go across all of the areas of the council, and so I think the opportunity to be able to draw in all areas of the council would be very beneficial in this instance.
Right, through you, Chair, then in that case I think it might be sensible if we circulate the initiation document amongst the group so we can get an approval and move forward with it quickly. Otherwise we'll be waiting a couple of months to approve a project initiation document. So if members are happy, that's the approach we'll take.
I'm very happy with that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Murphy?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a little bit concerned about bringing in young people, because I think bringing in young people to sit in a committee, and especially to talk about self-harm, can be really daunting. So I think we need to be really, really, really careful of how you do that. That's all I'm going to say, because I just think us as adults obviously find some committees quite daunting. So to bring in a youngster and to ask them to put their views across or whatever they want to talk about, we just need to be a little bit careful and a little bit mindful that they are young people.
Yeah. And I think essentially there will be protocols around this to make sure that we gain what we hope to gain from it and discover things we didn't anticipate, which is part of inquiry, but also to make all people feel comfortable rather. Comfortable in sharing what will add value to the discussion.
Through you, Chair, and we've certainly done it before. I don't doubt we'll do it again in the future. Yes, these issues can be particularly traumatic, but we do have processes and procedures in place, and we will, of course, protect children in advance of any committee session. We're not going to be, we will be protecting them in this environment.
Riley?
Yeah, I fully agree, Councillor Murphy, 100%. So the way we currently do this with Children's Services Scrutiny at the moment is the Youth Parliament, Jenny and Stuart Hogg, who are participation. We look at it together. David looks at it with us, and we give them something that they might want to discuss. They can come or they can ask questions. So by no means do I mean get them in the room for the whole day, for the whole discussion all the time. Just allow them to have, at some point throughout this procedure, have a say.
We do have in your packs, examples of the work programme for your panels going ahead, but unless somebody else has anything to add to it, Councillor?
Yeah. Just wonder why we can't get the working from home item on the February meeting. Don't know why it's not there already.
Chair, I don't know why it's not there, so I'll make inquiries, officers, and we'll make sure we have some update for you here.
Okay. Where it states Uber Eats, there are other food delivery services available as well. Okay.
Unless there's a problem, it should be at the February meeting, shouldn't it? Working from home.
I would imagine next week there may be things that will emerge that this board would want to look at in greater depth over the coming months.
I know we've just chuckled about it, but yeah, what is Uber Eats? What was all that about again?
I noticed in one of the meetings that a lot of concern has been shared about the safety of food delivery bike riders in the city centre, but also the safety of pedestrians and others around them, drivers as well. And it's interesting because there's been a lot on the telly recently about the electric bikes, the legality of some of the bikes, but also the welfare of those who are riding the bikes. There's lots of issues. So, we have shared spaces in the city centre, but there is an issue about the safety in terms of lack of lights, lack of high vis, the speed of some of the people, the conditions they're expected to work under, which is contributing to that speed as well. So we're just trying to engage with people who have a responsibility for that. So it could be certain traders, it could be the police. What role does the council have, if any, about monitoring that? So that they can exist, but not present a huge risk to people as it's grown. Sorry. Any other business? No. Okay, so if you're happy, and I'm sure you will be, we can call this meeting to a close. And thank you for your attendance and contributions. See you next week. Thank you.